In 2024, Vladimir Guerrero switched over to first base and led the charge at the position. But going into 2025, we have a couple of strong candidates that will rise up the rankings, like Vinnie Pasquantino, Christian Incarnacion Strand, and Tristan Casas. We're covering first base on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane. You can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It will subscribe you to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And if you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly, truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. But most importantly to Matt and I, guys, give us a chance on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth personalized experience through text messaging alerts right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute episode. And you know what, Matt? Let's get to it. First base, we're getting some way too early ranking stuff going on here, and first base is an interesting position. It's very interesting, Matt. Why don't you take the lead here and kind of break down for the people how we're going to do the episode and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so first base is clear. In terms of doing rankings, it's clear cut. I think it's pretty obvious until you get to pick 10 through 12 and beyond. That's when it kind of gets a little muddy. So we'll cover that. But first, we want to review the position as a whole, how 2024 panned out versus how everybody was drafted and things like that. So a couple of key takeaways from just looking at ADP last year. Freddie Freeman didn't live up to the number one first baseman. Didn't really finish as he finished as the number 3 first baseman, so not atrocious, but I feel that based off the performance last year versus how it reflected.
According to Yahoo 5x5 standard category leagues, he was the 5th first baseman overall.
Right. And he was a first round pick in a lot of places, first or the top of the second, the first pick of the second round. And I don't feel he lived up to the draft price based off his performance in 2024. So that was a little bit of a bust. Matt Olson, obviously, too, another one that didn't live up to, the draft price. And, Nolan Jones, obviously, Paul Goldschmidt, but we all called that. And then there was some bright spots too. When we told you to draft Harper lived up to the draft price, even though he spent a good chunk of time on the IL. He still returned on the value, in all honesty. End of the second, beginning of the third. That was a fantastic draft pick. You look at where you picked up Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who finishes the number 1 first baseman. I feel that was also a great pick. And you didn't have to pay as high as the Freddie Freemans. You got him at the end or in the middle of the second round, and you were pretty hype about that. And, long story short, then there was some appointments, the guy I got absolutely destroyed on all our comments, but yet I have to slam dunk on everybody who hated on me for this. Yanir Diaz, who couldn't live up to a single thought or iota that he could perform this year. The best takeaway for that he did was he pretty much had a really good batting average, and that was really about it. After June, he was on everybody's waiver wire, and for good reason. Just like I said, he wasn't going to live up to the hype. So those are my highlights and takeaways from first base. And I guess I'll leave you on this last note. Just because somebody can kind of do it if they're in the older side, like a Yanir Diaz that's come out of nowhere, does not mean they're going to be able to repeat and not have some serious negative regression going into the next year. And there's a couple guys like that at other positions that I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to label them the Yanir Diaz of 2025. So as we go through it, I think it'll be a great lesson and things to remember going into this season.
Yeah, Matt, great take on first base there. And I'm going to chime in and say, first base, between a lot of guys getting injured and underperforming, it was tough. It was a tough year for first base. And it kind of reflects, as we go into the next segment where we're going to talk about our 2025 rankings, you'll kind of see that, right? And if we're going by Yahoo standard 5x5 category leagues, it finished up at first base last year. Top 10 was Vlad, Bryce Harper, Anthony Santander, Josh Naylor, Freddie Freeman, Pete Alonso, Salvador Perez, Yanir Diaz, Matt Olson, and Alec Burleson. 2 of those 10 are catchers. we're not playing Salvador Perez or Yanir Diaz at first base. At least most of us aren't, and I hope you're not doing that. It was a very bad position. A lot of guys underperformed. You look at even like a Christian Walker, could have had a better year. He, hit 26 homers with a 251 batting average. Cody Bellinger started off the year like a house on fire and then kind of sizzled off in the second half. Pasquantino dealt with injuries last year, so did Casas and Strand. You really had to scrap. You had to, if you didn't take Vladimir Guerrero or Bryce Harper or, Freddie Freeman was still good, you really struggled at the position. So I'm hoping going into 2025, we could, navigate this position a little bit better than we, did in 24. I really think this is going to be a position where we're going to have to deep dive, that you're going to have to lock in with us, and we're going to help get you through first base, going into this upcoming season, because I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think there's one specific guy or, he's definitely going to be a sleeper. You could take him late. No, I really think first base, as Matt said, is going to be very cut and dry. And, people know who the sleepers are. People know who those names are, because we're literally about to cover them here in a second. I don't really have too much else of a takeaway here. I'll talk about ADP, the way things were drafted. Really not too much special going on there either. You look at, a guy like Josh Naylor, you made profit on, was taken after pick 100, 15th first baseman off the board. You look at Salvador Perez, was taken really late, if you played him at first base by some magic. But I'll highlight one name here. I'll highlight one name, actually, where I think you could have made some money. Ryan Mountcastle was coming off the board as the 29th first baseman overall, pick 258, and Mountcastle actually had a pretty good season. We'll talk about those numbers real quick here with Ryan Mountcastle. If my computer wants to work with me here today. But he had a good season, right? So it was 473 at-bats. He had 54 runs, 13 homers, 63 RBIs. He had 271, 3 steals. So while he was on the diamond, he was helping. He dealt with injuries here and there. And I think Mountcastle, is somebody that maybe we can, get a little bit later going into 25. We shall see. Matt, you got anything else here you want to talk about from 2024, or want to start looking forward a little bit here?
No, let's hop on in it. I like this. All right, so I guess you want to start top to bottom to top. We'll because I think we'll cover like top 12 if we have time, which doesn't look like we will, but which
we'll see how it goes. I definitely think we could start. Let's start bottom to top. Why don't you do your 12 to 1, and then I'll do mine, and then we could kind of compare notes and see where we're at.
All right, and don't mind me. This is literally really, really rough draft, but there's a lot of questions unknown at this position too, in terms of where players are going to land. So, based off of landing, they're either going to rise or fall. So I'm going to read it backwards. So at 12, I have Spencer Steer. Then 11, Michael Bush. Then at 10, Josh Naylor. 9, Christian Walker. 8, Christian Incarnacion Strand. 7, Tristan Casas. 6, Vinnie Pasquantino. 5, Pete Alonso. 4, Matt Olson. 3, Bryce Harper. 2, Freddie Freeman. And, of course, 1, Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Matt, I love what you got going on there. But before I jump in and I give my 12 to 1 for first base 2025 rankings, we are going to, just a quick ad for you guys.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place your live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sports betting partner of the NFL. And guys, I might as well give you something to make that $5 count and get that $150. Bet against the Giants. It sucks to say I'm a Giant fan. I say it every week, but honestly, Daniel Jones just pick the lowest amount of yards possible and then pick the under. In terms of over, under on interceptions, over on the interceptions, under on the touchdowns. And you'll essentially will your way into winning $5, if not more, if you do a nice little parlay. All against Daniel Jones. He sucks so much. He should not be a quarterback in the NFL. At least the starting one. But anyway, guys, FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast, Diamond Club on Subtext, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. This offseason, rely on our dynamic content. Get our, redraft rankings, dynasty rankings, prospect rankings, sleepers, breaks out, busts, so much more than what we offer on this 30-minute podcast, because what you'll get on this podcast is our conjoint short list of either busts, sleepers, values, all that stuff. Whereas when you're part of the Diamond Club, you're going to get our individual extra takes where, you'll get maybe like 5 each during the season from us, whereas we do a list of like 20. And like all the guys we're either avoiding, targeting, and everything under the sun. You can only get that in one place, and that's in the Diamond Club on Subtext. So check us out there. Links in the description below. But Dom, why don't you give us our rankings?
Yeah, so let's jump back in. We're doing our top 12s here, and our top 12s are very similar. And this goes to, the testament that I said earlier, that first base is kind of cut and dry this year. So at 12, I have Michael Busch. 11, I have Cody Bellinger. 10, I have Christian Walker. 9, I have Josh Naylor. And then Matt and I are literally the same from 8 to 1. CES, Christian Incarnacion Strand, Tristan Casas at 7, Vinnie P at 6, Olson, Alonso at 5, Olson at 4, Freeman at 3, Harper at 2, and Vlad at 1. We'll start just breaking down at the top. Vlad, monster season, hit 323, 30 homers, 103 RBIs. 98 runs. Was just a really fantastic year for Vlad. He's still going to be just 26 years old this upcoming season in 2025. And I think we found the baseline. I think the baseline is Vlad's a 300 hitter, a lot of runs and RBIs when this Blue Jays team is good, and they're pretty much a lock for 30 plus homers. I think that secures him at the top of first base. Matt, any comments on Vlad? I don't think I'm going to spend too much time here on him.
So, with Vlad, it's just really just a matter of what we're going to get. I feel like he's the highest up play with a decent floor, but there is a point where, like, okay, he could not live up to the draft price. We've seen it in the past where he's had, big seasons where you're just like, okay, cool. You look at 2022 where he finished with 32 home runs, and 2021 where he had the 48 home run season, and then he follows up 2023 with like 26, and not having as great of a year, and he didn't live up to his draft price with only 78 runs and whatnot. Like that's the kind of season you can get, even though he had a monster season. So like there's a safe floor, but the floor may not be worth the draft price. So like I'm going to take him first over Freddie Freeman for the first time, I think, in a decade, that I'm not taking Freddie Freeman as my number one overall first baseman, but I'm going to take the upside where he can not only just finish as the number one first baseman, but as a top 7 or 8 player. And he also has the ability to finish as, the Aaron Judge type, where he finishes as the one where he has the upside to hit 50 home runs. So that is why Vlad is one for me, at least, the ceiling play versus the baseline. It comes with risk, but it's definitely worth the pick. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, even in points leagues, though, Vlad excels where, his walk-to-strikeout ratio is always really good. It even improved again last year where he had 72 walks to 96 strikeouts. So that even in a points league, Vlad is just going to go above and beyond there. Matt, I think we broke him down pretty good. All the underlying stuff looks really good, too. If you guys want the nerdy stuff, it all looks really, really good for Vlad as well. So I don't think there's any reason to have any doubt. I think Vlad will be taken at the end of the first round. I think if you want to take him at the end of the first round, it's a smart move. First base is very thin. You pair him with a speedster. In the second round, you grab somebody that's got a little bit of speed upside there, and I think that's going to make a very nice combo. Let's move on to this next guy, Matt. It's actually your boy. And it's the first time he's not going to be number one in a while. So I think it's only right that you lead with Freddie Freeman, brother.
Yeah. So like, here's the thing with like Freddie, right? Like, I'm just disappointed in the season, I think, and it comes with a couple of factors. So one, he's going to be 36 this year, which kind of scares me. The fact that the power dipped significantly this year, whereas like he's kind of looking how he was earlier in his career where he couldn't, get past like 25 home runs. But then he had the mega seasons that kind of have just kind of put things back into place. We're like, okay, cool. We can believe in the power. Injury didn't get in his way, things like that. And the runs and ribs have always been there, but he did take a dip in the batting average this year. The ribs came down, the power came down, only hit 22. And even the runs did for where he hits in that lineup, says a lot. How he, couldn't get brought home, and the lineup itself is pretty loaded. So the fact that the runs weren't there was showing that there's a dip in it. And then you look at a little bit on more of like the advanced side of things. The bat speed is in the toilet right now. It's 69.8. I don't know what that is exactly, other than it's really bad. In terms of, like, I don't know how to explain that stat, the ranking of the stat percentage, but I just know that it's on the lower end side. You want to be sitting at like 75, 80 at that point to just be like pretty good at the category, not even like, elite. And then on top of that, the average exit velocity is sitting about like 89.4, which isn't atrocious, but it's down from 90 miles an hour the year before. You look at, how often he's barreled, it's down. Hard contact is down, 41% versus 2023, where it was 42%. He barreled significantly less this year. Then you just look at, like, him as a whole and just watching with your eyes too. And you're just like, there's something different. I think the age is finally catching up, and, Father Time is undefeated, but I'm still willing to draft him because of what the baseline is. See, that it's a different, right? So the ceiling, I don't think, is high anymore, but the season that he had, I think there's going to be positive regressions. I think the runs and ribs are going to be there. I think the batting average returns, but I think we're going to live in a realm of 20 to 25 home runs, but with the runs elite along with the elite batting average, I'm still willing to take that floor play, and I feel like he's the safest pick out of them, whereas there's too many options and outcomes that could possibly happen with everybody after him.
Yeah, Matt, great take on Freeman. I want to see what the draft price is, and I hate that I keep saying this. I feel like if anyone's been watching, me talk
ADP.
About, all this stuff, I just want to see where all these guys are going, because value is the big thing in any fantasy sport, not even just baseball. It's where are we taking these guys, and can we profit off of where we're drafting them, right? Freddie Freeman, I don't know if that's going to be the case. Matt broke him down very, very well. I'm just going to add that at 36 next year, with all of his, major underlying stats, going in the other way, I think Freddie Freeman's going to be in a void for me, because I think we're still going to have to take him at the end of the second, beginning of the third round.
Which and put him in a bust category.
Yeah, it's just the upside's not there anymore. And Matt, I'm not going to reiterate everything you just said. I just wanted to make the point that I'm going to be avoiding Freddie Freeman in 2025. If that draft price isn't like 4th, 5th round, which I don't think it will be. So, that's going to most likely be the case. That the runs and RBIs could be good. I don't think the power is going to be there. The sprint speed is very bad after, Freddie Freeman sold 23 bases in 2023. He was down to 9 this past season. I think that's going to even go down even more. And the 300 batting average is definitely in the cards of Freddie Freeman. You don't lose that tool, to just hitting the ball, knowing where to put it. That really doesn't go away. Let's move on to this next guy. Let's talk about another newcomer to the position. Let's talk Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper, pretty strong year. Still a guy who's always going to deal with a little bit of injury here and there. That's just comes with the territory with Bryce Harper. But, still had a strong season. 145 games played, 550 at-bats, 85 runs, 42 doubles, 30 homers, 87 RBIs. He stole 7 bases and hit 285. A very, very Bryce Harper season for him. You always expect Bryce Harper to be, 30 home runs plus. The counting stats look really good. Steals, he usually gets you around 10, so 7. You're not mad at that. And then Harper's a career 281 hitter, 285 last year. He's going to be 32 next year. I don't think there's upside. We're not drafting Bryce Harper expecting 40 home runs and 120 RBIs. No, not expecting that anymore. But hey, if he can just be that solid baseline of 30 plus homers, good counting stats, good batting average, chips and steals, 4.5 category guy. I love me some Bryce Harper, but we're running low on time, so I'm really not going to get too much more into Bryce Harper than that.
Yeah, so oh God, of course I hit the wrong selection. Gotta love internet. Bryce Harper, honestly, for me, a disappointing season as overall because of one, the injury, two, just he was super streaky this year. Whereas he's usually a consistent force throughout the whole year. You can kind of count on him. There was like a good chunk of weeks where he pretty much lost you your week because he's a top end pick, and it just didn't happen. But that was the Phillies as a whole. When they were hot all at once, and when they were cold, it was really, really putrid. So even when he got on base, the team was still bad, and you couldn't even get run production. So it was just really brutal to own him as a whole last year. But the fantasy output was still good when he was really good. He was elite. So that is why he's still up at the top of this. And I think that next year will be a little bit more consistent. I hate the manager over in Philly. So I mean, there's a lot of issues I have with that team as a whole. And I feel like that also comes into play, and the hitting coach also needs to get fired. So I think there's a couple things. If they can make the move, at least in the hitting coach category, I think Harper's definitely in for a way better season. And then it's kind of going to be more of gauging my expectations. Obviously, price, like I said, but also two, it's going to be just what are the offseason moves are going like, and how is spring potential already going. But guys, that's it for what I got for Bryce Harper. Coming up next, we're gonna be covering Matt Olson and what to do with him this season, and Pete Alonso, the possible outcomes where he can land and how that can affect his fantasy value, whether it's positive or negative. Coming up next.
And I need to talk to you about my friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time Picks curation, it makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. Game Time has plenty of great features, as well as their all-in pricing. When you toggle this feature, it shows you the total up front, so you have no surprise fees when it comes to checkout time. With their seat views, you get a panoramic view from the actual seat you'll be sitting in the app before you buy. With their lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. With Game Time's ticket coverage, your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. With Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And all right, folks, let's get right back into it. Matt teased it. We're getting into it. Matt Olson. With Matt Olson, very, very down year. Only 29 home runs coming off of a 54 home run season. 139 RBIs in 23 down to 98. The batting average from 283 in 2023 down to 247. Matt Olson was a killer, man. Matt Olson really, really struggled. Even if you traded for him, the second half still wasn't really that great. So you probably didn't profit too much off of that. He did play 162 games for the third straight season. Very, very the definition of healthy Matt Olson is. I think there's a bounce back in 2025. I think the home runs come back. The batting average is the thing I don't expect to come back. There's been a few seasons where Olson has done it for a whole season with the batting average. He's a career 254 hitter, though, so I expect him to be around that. But there's a world where, the runs and the RBIs come way back up, where this Braves team gets Acuna back next year. Everyone on that team dealt with injuries. When we did the Braves episode, we talked about how that whole team was literally injured this year. I think Olson and the rest of them, at least most of them, can stay healthy in 2025. And Olson bounces back. Just don't expect that batting average to be like 270, 280. I'm expecting more of like a 250, 255 with 35 plus homers and really, really good counting stats. I think Matt Olson might actually come at a little bit of a deal. When I was talking about Freddie Freeman being in that like fourth, fifth round, I think that's where we might get Olson, and that might be a good spot to draft him actually.
Yeah, I mean, I there is no doubt in my mind that he's not going to bounce back. I think he's going to be, essentially just fine. Underlying stats didn't really kill him. So, I just kind of look at it like this. The talent just doesn't magically disappear, and the power hasn't disappeared. It just didn't translate to the field and the plate. So I'm going to draft him with confidence, and honestly, he's going to probably be a target because of the overreaction from the poor performance this year. But let's move on. So about Pete Alonso, this is an interesting one. His value could either go really, really up or really, really down, depending on the landing spot. And it's actually, it's really interesting. So there's a lot of landing spots that are on the table right now. They're all it's interesting, right? So you got Washington Nationals, which actually I would like as a team as a whole. They're a young.
They need a vet like him. They definitely need a vet like him on that team.
They also need that bat in that lineup too. Yeah. That can be the difference maker. Even though I like Cruz and I like Wood, to add that to complement would be really nice.
I like that landing spot. I've been hearing rumors about that one too, and I think the Nats should really just spend the money and do it.
They should. I don't think they will though.
No, they probably won't, but it's nice to dream for them.
There's one that's out there on, a Bleacher Report saying the Rockies have a shot at him. I don't think he goes to the Rockies if he wants to win a championship, but
if he goes to the Rockies, that's 50 home runs easy. I'll be honest.
Way more. I think he'll break the home run record because he's done 50 in
his rookie season.
Yeah, and he's done 54 a few times. So I mean, it is what it is. He could do it with easy. So as long as he just doesn't hang out with Chris Bryant, it would be really fantasy successful. And honestly, too, he might even move up to be my number 2 overall first baseman if he goes there. Then there's San Diego and Boston Red Sox. And I don't like the Red Sox landing because that also will affect Casas.
Yeah, so they got Casas. I don't think they're going to be too.
Yeah.
I think the Red Sox want Soto. I heard that meeting went well for them.
Yeah, I'll cry if he goes there. The Padres, I like that landing spot a lot. They need it. You could move Arias around. Ha-Seong Kim's gone, so Arias could just move over, and Alonso would fit in well with the Machados, and him kind of aging out, and Alonso still being at a decent age. You still got Tatis there. It's a good team that he'll land on, and there'll be a lot of ribbies and run opportunities. So great landing spot there. You can go over to San Francisco Giants. Really won't like that. There's even talk of
I'll tell you this. I like the Astros. I think the Astros is a great landing spot for him. They lost Jose Abreu last year, and they really need a first baseman. And if you put him in that lineup with Tucker and them boys, it'd be dangerous.
No, I mean I could totally see that. I just that team is actually on a downward turn with the exit of like Bregman, the demise, and I say it, the slow demise of Altuve. You got Jordan and things like that, but the team I don't think is going to be as good going into 25 as a whole. Because I don't think, one, the health is going to be there, and two, I don't think it's as good of a lineup as it was in the past. So
I hear that.
They're talking about the Cubs. I don't foresee that. Let me see here. The Seattle Mariners would be a great landing as a whole, just because of what that team looks like, and they played really well towards the end.
They need a bat too. They definitely need a big bat in that lineup.
And you know what? Like, hopefully, Julio could kind of have a more consistent season, and not have the slowest start in the history of baseball. And now they got Rosarena who hopefully can bounce back, and the rest of the bats in that lineup should be good. So that'd be a nice landing spot. And then I could totally see him just coming back to the Mets if they go out and get Soto, which that meeting went well as well. So those are the spots that okay, let's talk about where I would love it. Obviously, Rockies would be numero uno for fantasy baseball. Returning home, even without Soto, level. He stays exactly where he is. Him going to the Nats, I think, is a boost because it's a way better team, in my opinion, in terms of pieces around him and the availability for guys to get on base and have the ribbies potential. So I like that. Whereas the Mets are kind of they pretty much just have Lindor, him, and whatever veteran decides to show up that day. So it's a little bit better. And then that's real. And then the Padres. I think the Padres would be another great landing spot overall. Maybe the most balanced line spot where I still think he'll go up in my rankings. But as a whole, Pete Alonso, I think, please just go to Colorado Rockies as a selfish fantasy baseball player.
So I'm not even going to add anything on Alonso there. Matt broke him down perfectly. I want to talk about this. I think this is going to be the sweet spot at first base, and we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to mention all three of these names at once. After this top five, the next three I think is where we're going to make our money. Vinnie Pasquantino at 6, Tristan Casas at 7, and Christian Incarnacion Strand at 8. I don't think all three of them will break out this year, but I think there's a solid chance that 2 out of the 3 will. And if you're constantly drafting these guys, there's going to be a good chance that you profit at first base. There's literally a chance that all 3 of these guys can move into the top 5. I mean, not all 3 of them, but individually, each of them could take a step forward that knocks, whether it's Alonso or Olson or even Freddie Freeman, who's getting a little bit older, out, and one of them steps up and moves in. Like I said, I can't really pinpoint any one of them specifically at this point. I'm going to deep dive them all as we go through, this off season. But these are my 3 guys that I think I'm going to be drafting constantly at first base, unless I get Vlad, at the maybe beginning of the second round, I'll be targeting him there. But these are the 3 that I think I'm going to make our money on. Vinnie P, literally, we talk about him all the time. Matt and I, love this guy. Very good play discipline. He's a guy that can have a batting average and power. This Kansas City Royals team is only getting better. Him and Bobby Witt are going to lead the charge there. So with Vinnie P, really, really love him there. Matt, jump in and talk about some Vinnie P real quick. We could do this episode for 3 hours if we wanted to.
Yeah, Vinnie P is my favorite of the 3. Let's put it this way: he showed exactly what he could do, and then unfortunately broke his thumb and had to end his season. I think he probably would have finished as a top 5 first baseman if it wasn't for that. And he was a top 5 first baseman after the month of April. And he just rolled that all the way up until his injury. So Vinnie P really took off. That power is going to be sound. I think that this year, the thumb not having a full offseason to recover, I think is going to be fantastic. I'm all about him. The Tristan Casas one, he's interesting. He could completely flop. He's the most risky one out of the three, in my opinion, because he tore ligaments in his thumb and wasn't able to really get out there. Even though we heard throughout the season, okay, he's going to return by this date. He's going to return by this date. He's going to return by this date. The several setbacks scares me. And then CES, Christian Incarnacion Strand and the Reds. I love him. Unfortunately, he decided to make a career decision and get the surgery versus coming back where he could have played. And I think that was the right move. So I think he's another safe one. But, and honestly, I'm talking myself into raising him over Casas as we're speaking. But just like the safety aspect and who I think is going to pan out between the two, I think CES is going to have the more likelihood to not only return, but to also finish right up there and probably could also hit the most home runs at first base position this year if he really got the opportunity to play full season, because he has the most power out of everybody here.
He does have a tremendous amount of power. And I will say this for Casas, though. Even though he has been very injury prone, so far throughout his young career, he's still only 24 years old. And this kid's 6'5", 244. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen him, but he's just like brolic. He's like a big boy. He's another dude that can hit 35 home runs and hit, 275. And, Red Sox team is getting better as well. But guys, that's all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And after you make us your first listen, go check out our boy Sully over at Locked On MLB and make him your second listen each and every day. But guys, until next time, see ya.